Hi, and welcome to another episode of EPMS Tech Talk. I'm Craig Anderson.
And I'm Joanne LaFlamme.
How you doing, Joanne?
Good, how are you?
Good. So what are we going to do today? Because I know this is going to be basically this number 6 video in the series of the CRM training videos.
Right.
So what did we want to focus on tonight?
Well, we've been in the customer review. What I thought we could talk about tonight was a little more in-depth about emailing and how that works in CRM.
Okay, yeah, that's a big topic.
Okay.
That also seems to be one of the more controversial topics too with our CRM, because people sometimes have a hard time understanding the difference between our email and using something like Outlook. So I want to take a moment and talk about that.
Okay.
So what we did in our CRM system is we developed our own email client. Well, a client, it just means that it's like Outlook. Outlook is an application that you configure to read or pull emails down from the server and send emails to the email server. Well, our CRM system, our CRM module has its own built-in email client, which you also configure with an email account for a user. And then emails can be pulled down from the server or sent out to the server. Okay. The big difference between the two is, and this is where sometimes it's hard to get their arms around it, is that in Outlook is an individual email client, meaning you have your own Outlook application with your own email account set up on it on your computer.
Right.
I have mine on my computer. Now, I can't see your emails, and you can't see mine. And there's some validity to that in a lot of business aspects. However, when you're trying to work with customers and manage their accounts and their marketing and just, make sure that everybody is communicating to the customer in the form or fashion that you want to be communicated, when you use Outlook, that's hard to keep track of. Unless you're CC'd or an email is forwarded to you, you do not have any view of that communication thread. Well, that's where our email client kind of picks up and does a better job at, because our email client is primarily designed to be an email client that many users can be given permission to look at other users' emails.
Right.
So why is that important? Well, let's just say I'm a manager of a CSR group. I could be set up so I can view every CSR's emails, and they can be set up to share and see each of their other teammates' emails.
Right.
So now they can effectively work as a team. If one CSR is out of the office, the other ones can pick up where that person left off to help manage a client if another email was to come in from that client.
Okay.
Me as a manager, I get the opportunity, to, if I want, to go in and view these other emails. Okay? So that's one major advantage. And the other major advantage is people on the road, if they're able to log into the system, they can see those emails and conduct those emails. But also if an employee was to leave, or if there was a problem with an account, the people that need to get involved, management, owners, whatever it may be, have the opportunity to now review some of the communication on how that account was handled.
Right.
Okay.
Makes
So that's
sense.
one of the biggest advantages.
Okay.
So let's look at the system a little bit, and I want to kind of show you where the email accounts are set up.
Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good. Yep.
So on my CRM screen here, I'm going to go over to the left-hand panel and click on email accounts. And you'll notice I have a list of 4 email users. Now, these are users that have been configured in our CRM system to use the CRM email. One key point, you don't have to use our email client. You can use Outlook, and we're in the process of developing an integration which is going to allow for some syncing.
Okay.
However, with some integrations, or most integrations, there always are some deficiencies that can't be overcome. And you still don't necessarily have all of that global view unless things are executed in the way that they're supposed to be. So when you're using our CRM, you have the choice as a company to not use the email. You can set up a user to be able to use all the other CRM functionality, but you can keep them from using the email functionality by just not setting them up with an email account. So the
Okay.
creation of that email account is actually the trigger that allows that person to have access to CRM email.
Okay, makes sense.
So it gives you some control. So let's take a look at mine here. Now I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but basically you set up your login name, which is the login name used in CRM, and you can actually get a drop down to get that. Here's my display name, and here is my email account. And notice that this email account has this little 3-digit distinguishing factor in it. It has the word CRM. Now that's just what I chose to use.
Okay.
You can use anything you want. I could have used Craig.sales, whatever.
Okay.
I just used the same similar convention as we do for our Outlook business account, which is craig.anderson@entpms.com. And for my CRM part of it, email, I just inserted the word CRM.
So you made a new email account specifically
Yes.
for CRM.
Yeah, so I still have my regular business account,
Okay.
which is important because I communicate to other people that have nothing to do with the management of an account,
right.
like my bank, my lawyer, vendors, whatever. And those are communication threads that nobody else needs to see, nor
Right.
in some cases shouldn't see. Okay, so I'm maintaining my regular, what I call my business email account, which is in my Outlook,
Okay.
which is craig.anderson@entpms.com. However, when I work with clients and on their accounts, I have now a unique email address that allows me to keep that separation.
Makes sense.
Okay? I put in an email password, and notice here there is something called notification email address. This is my Outlook one, my business one. Well, why do I have that? Well, because our CRM email client actually triggers notification emails based on certain activities or events. And those are basically set down here. This first one here allows me to, if I did want to use the exact same email account for my Outlook and for my CRM, in other words, I don't want to have a unique email address, right? I can click off that checkbox, and it's a basic filter that when an email tries to come to the CRM email application, it first verifies whether that is a known user in CRM, a known contact in CRM.
Okay.
And if it is, it lets the email in. If it doesn't match anything in the database, the enterprise database, it doesn't allow that email to come in.
Okay.
So you could use the same email account, but there are some problems with that. Even though that acts as a filter, somebody, a new contact at a company that you've been working with, gets your email address from a coworker, wants
Right.
to ask you about a job, sends you an email, but you're now blocking it because they're
Right.
not in the system yet.
Or vice versa, if somebody sends you an email that has nothing to do with this,
It-
it's going to come in.
If you don't have that checked off.
Right.
Exactly. Okay. So I keep this unchecked because I'm using a unique CRM email account. Now, I can also check this off. I'm a supervisor in the system, so I act as a management role. I receive a notification when I send out CRM emails. Well, that's kind of redundant, so I'm actually going to uncheck that. But I do want to receive, when I receive incoming emails, I do want to get a notification because I may not actually have the CRM application open, or I may not be looking at it, and I may be on the road and I get my Outlook emails on my phone. That will send a notification, and I can see that I have an email that came in, and I'll be able to read some basic content of that email. However, to respond to it, I would have to log back into
To CRM.
CRM to
Okay.
respond to it. Because I'm a supervisor and I wanted to be able to monitor all the in and out activity, I've checked off either one of these. So I get a notification when somebody else sends out an email and when somebody receives one. Again, you may not want that many email notifications, so you can determine which ones you want to check.
Okay.
Now, this checkbox here, if I uncheck it, the list disappears. If I check it, I then have the ability to add, these are all the other users that are set up in my database here as CRM users, and I've put a checkbox next to them indicating that I want to be able to read those emails, and
Okay.
you're actually one of them, so I
Yep.
can see your email. Now, if I want you to be able to see mine, when I set you up, I have to put a checkbox next to my name in the list.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Does that
Makes
make
sense?
sense?
Yep.
Okay. All this over here, the upper part here is just about creating a signature. So when I send out an email, a signature automatically is formatted into the body of the email. And down here is the actual email server information that you would fill out. So this is going to be pertinent to the company that's using CRM, their specific email server account information.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
So this is a server account information, and then I had the login information, which is in the upper left-hand corner here.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay?
Now, can we take a look or talk about or take a look at the different areas in CRM that you can generate an email from?
Sure. All right, so I'm going to save that because I actually made some changes. And I'm going to close that. Okay. Now, we gave users the ability to generate emails from different areas of the customer view,
Okay.
and also from the event view. And the reason for that is because we tag those emails accordingly. All right, so I'm going to show you all the different ways that you can send an email and talk about how they get tagged, but then when I actually show a little more detail about the email window, I'll actually just do that on this first one.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not redundant. So from the customer list, if I right click and I hit create email, this has now brought up what looks like a pretty basic email window. All right, so when I send it by right clicking on the customer name, that gets tagged in our CRM system as a general email. So it will fall into the general folder in
Okay.
our email tree when you look at the emails on the email tab or in the event view.
But it's tied to that customer.
It's tied to the customer.
Okay.
It's tied to me as the user that sent it.
Okay.
But it's considered generic, meaning it's not associated to an estimate or an order
Okay.
or an invoice.
Okay.
It's generic, general for the customer.
customer.
Okay.
Yep. Makes sense.
So I'm going to explain some of the details here on the email window. You have the typical send email button. You can save this to a draft if you've started it. You can actually attach attachments. And we have something here called email templates. And I think we touched base on this on an earlier video when we're in the preferences. But in the preference area, you can actually set up predefined email templates.
Okay.
And what that does for me as a user is I can create myself a whole list of email templates for common messages I send
Yep.
out. And the benefit to me is that it minimizes my typing.
Right.
Okay. And I think as we talked about this in a previous video, even though the template comes in, which I'll show you how that happens in a second, you can still
You
edit
change
it.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to grab this new customer welcome letter. Now notice, the body of the email just pre-populated itself with a whole bunch of text. But again, I can modify this, all right? I can come in here and actually delete this stuff, or I could type in something completely different, okay? So it gives me some flexibility.
Okay.
Now, because I didn't have any users set up as a default contact in the system, I have to hit the to button to actually select. And you do this just like you would normally do when you create an email. I can also add others to the to list. I can also CC others. And if you notice while we're in here, there's also a blind copy button.
Okay.
So you could actually grab somebody from the list or hand type in an email and blind copy somebody.
Okay.
Okay. So, and here's my in the body here, because in my template I had a different sort of signature. It kind of overwrite the default signature because it knew I was using a template.
Okay.
So it didn't allow, so you don't get redundancy, you
Right.
don't get redundancy signatures. So this is slightly different than the signature I saved, but it is a signature. So at this point I would have the ability to either save this or send it. I'm just going to close it. And then it's going to ask me, do I want to save it to the draft? I'm going to say no. So I did have an opportunity at that point to save it as a
Okay.
draft. Okay.
Great.
So from that point, that was a general email. Now the next point, I can go to Contacts tab, And I can either right click on the contact and hit create email, or I can actually click on the email that's listed in the column here, because what we did in the system is we enabled all email addresses in the database as a hyperlink
Great.
to operate an email. Now, when I do this, I do want to show one difference. See how it automatically filled the two?
Right.
Because I specifically selected that specific contact to email to. All right?
Makes sense.
And then working the rest of the email is exactly the same. One thing I didn't cover a few seconds ago, though, there are some additional tools here for maintaining the email, such as your fonts, font size, and so forth. Okay, and we do have a spell check as well,
Great.
which is good. All right, so I'm going to close that as well. Now, I'm going to go just to a different customer here. And now I'm going to go to the RFQ. Well, on the RFQ screen, estimate screen, and order screen, the concept is exactly the same. So I'm just going to show you what the email looks like when I do it from an order. So I right click on an order, or I can actually select a different order and hit email. Now it brings up a different screen. It brings up a screen here that allows me to click on the order acknowledgement. Now I'm leaving this blank because I'm going to use the basic one, and I'm going to hit print. So what this is now doing in the background is it's building the PDF for that acknowledgement.
Okay.
Okay, and that screen just disappeared, so I hit OK, and now it's telling me it's going to display the PDF for me to review. So it brought the PDF up. I can now look at it and verify that it's the one I want.
Right.
So I'm happy with that. So I just close it, and now it brings up the email window. And what it did this time is it pulled in the default contact. It actually put in the subject line the order number, and it now automatically attached the order as a PDF as an attachment to the email.
Great.
So when I send this email out, that email now goes out with that PDF attached.
Right.
Okay. So in this case, it was the order acknowledgement. All right, so we'll close that. So that works exactly the same on RFQ estimates, orders, and actually on invoices. If I go to a company here that has an invoice and right click, same thing will happen. It'll give me the option of displaying the invoice for me. I can verify it's the one I want. I hit close. It opens up the email with the invoice attached. Okay, and I would send that out to the corresponding recipient. Now, every time I've done that, when we go to the email tab next, you're going to notice that there's a whole directory of folders. Okay? Each one of those emails, because they were executed from a different spot, is going to fall in the appropriate folder. Okay? So let's go to the email tab. And I want to go to a different company here that has more emails. Okay, so notice the folder structure here on the left. I have general, RFQ, estimate, order, invoice, and drafts. So if I started an email and I saved it as a draft for this company, it would fall in the draft folder. When I right-clicked on the company name up in the list up here, that email would have fell into the general folder. Okay? When I right-click on an RFQ from the RFQ tab, it falls here. Right-click on an estimate and so forth. So they fall in the appropriate folders. So how do I look at the emails? Well, any of these folders that have emails in them are going to have a plus sign. So there's the plus sign. So I click on that. Let's get the list a little bigger here so we can see it. And I have now all these subfolders created in that main folder. Each one of those subfolders were created as an event. Remember, we talked about events earlier on, that there are 3 things in CRM that are considered events, and they trigger a specific event ID in the database. Those are send and receiving of emails, calendars, and task appointments. So now we're looking at email events from this view here. And if I click on any of these folders, which was a specific event, there are actually 3 threads of email correspondence. There was the original send, the receive, and another send.
So the original email you send out creates the folder, generates the folder.
Creates the original event.
Yep. And then every subsequent.
Yeah, every subsequent activity, send and receive within that event gets built into that event.
Great.
Okay? So when we talk about events, basically think of them as buckets. They're just buckets that hold all those subsequent activities that go on, send and receives in the case of emails.
Great.
Okay. And by clicking on these different individual threads, I can actually read the actual email below. Okay, so let's look at another one. So this is one I must have sent out using my email template because it's my welcome letter. And notice I only have one email here, so I never got a response. Here's one that I originally sent out, and this was the original send, and then this was the respond back, and John just responded with the word response. So we were testing the email a little bit. So you can see all of this. Now, if there was an email that actually had, if I go back up in the tree structure here, and I go to RFQ, there's going to be an attachment. So here I have the original send, and notice there's a paperclip here, right? Here's the actual attachment. So I can actually double click this and open that attachment up and see it.
Great.
Okay? So everything gets contained within this email, just like your regular Outlook email.
Right.
The difference here is, though, this can be shared by people.
Right.
So again, why is this important? Well, this is kind of important to cover again. This gives a team of people the ability to work as a team effectively because they're sharing the same centralized point of communication. And it gives owners and managers the ability and some oversight to all of that because when needed, they can get access to all this stuff.
Great.
Okay, and see it. So depending on which part of the email thread you click on, the control buttons will change. I can create a brand new email for this company. I can reply to this particular email that I have highlighted. I can reply to all if there were multiples. I can forward it. I can delete it if I have permission to delete it. That is a permission setting in the user that has to be set up. But basically, it's an admin. And then there's a refresh. I can also right-click on the email, specific email thread and perform some of the same functions as well. And we also have a move folder option where it allows you to maybe move it into another folder if you needed to for some reason.
Okay.
And you have the ability to print it. Okay. So basically to print it, you have to right-click it to print it. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so that's how you see emails when you're looking at them from the email tab in the customer view. Now, we talked about events a little bit, and I'm going to cycle back to this. Remember, events are just the different activities that have been tagged in the database. Now, if I want to just look at emails, I can go to event category and select emails, and now this is just going to show me the emails that have been created, sent and received for this client. And if I double click them, I get what looks like, almost kind of like an iPhone sort of look. This is a read and view only view. I can't respond to the email, I can't forward it, I can't do anything. Why do we have this? Well, this is kind of a search and find or a maintenance area. Instead of trying to filter through all those particular folders, we've given you some more filtering capabilities and search capabilities within the event view to get to the specific email. Okay?
Makes sense.
So you can, however, in this email, this one here actually has an attachment, and notice that my pointer here changes to a finger when I go over it. So I can actually open up the attachment and read the attachment. Okay? The other place that we can see emails is up in the event view, which we're going to get into a little more detail, but I'm going to touch base on it slightly today. The event view is where, again, I can see emails in a list form like I'm looking at here on screen. Again, for the same purpose, maintenance, search and find, reassignment sort of activity. It's not an area you're going to go to on a regular basis. It's certainly not an area you're going to go to for your everyday activity and use of the email client. Okay. However, there is an email view here, which is now a much larger view of the email system. And the big difference here is I'm still looking at the house account, but I can actually change this for all customers. So the advantage of going to the event view as opposed to the email tab on the client, I get that global view of all emails in the system. Okay. And as you saw, it can be filtered down to a customer. Because I came from the customer view to the event view, it kept in the filter that customer, that highlighted customer. But it gave me the ability to see everything else. And again, the concept is all the same here. Now, one last thing we're going to talk about is a distribution list. I believe we spoke about this in a previous video, and we'll have to look back and make sure we did. But you can create distribution lists to send out emails, and these are meant to be used for marketing. You can also export these lists into an Excel spreadsheet so you can use it with another third-party application. However, our CRM email client gives you the opportunity from here to select one of the lists that have been created. You hit select, and it opens up an email window. And if you look here on the to and CC, they're grayed out. You can't do anything with it because behind that actual email window, we've embedded each email address that was incorporated in that particular list that you selected. And then you enter in your body of text. You can still use a template if you want. However, you have to, for the moment, keep the signature generic. Because right now we are in the process at some point of adding a user-definable field, not a user-definable field, I'm sorry, a database field from the database that would be like contact name. So you could put the word dear and then drop the database field in right after dear, and every email that goes out will then be personalized. But for right now in this version of CRM, you just have to whom it may concern or hello, that sort of thing. But we are changing that. But when you send the email from here, it is a blast email as a distribution list. And if you notice here in this list, we have a folder. Now this folder doesn't exist in the customer view because you don't send group emails from the customer view. You can only do it from the event view. So there is a distribution list here. This will show every email that we've done as a distribution, and these are just tests. However, when the client responds back, they don't come back into this list, so you don't have to go back and try to find each individual response within this list. The response actually comes back in the appropriate email folder for that customer.
Under the general?
Under the customer view, under the email tab. So if I sent out a blast list and you responded to it, I would see your response as a regular response in the customer view. So let's go back to the customer view for 1 second. How do I know when an email's come in? Right? Well, a couple of things. I get an email notification sent to my other email account.
On your Outlook or whatever.
Or my phone, whatever I have is my email notification email address. And I'll also get a flag. In this column right here, I don't actually have any, unfortunately, to show you, but a flag would show up. That flag indicates that that client has an unresponded email that needs response. Once you respond to it, it then kills that flag, takes the flag off, and that email has now been responded to. So when a user comes in every day, they could have a whole handful of customers that have that flag on there. And they know that those customers are now waiting for a response back. And that's also how, if you're covering for me, you know what emails that I need responded to because you'll see a flag there as well.
That's great.
Yeah. Any questions?
Nope, I think you've covered it all. Well, thank you.
All right, well, great. Well, this was another episode of EPMS Tech Talk. I'm Craig Anderson.
And I'm Joanne LaFlamme.
Please look forward to more to come. Thank you.